G'day and welcome back to another episode of SPCs Unleashed after a few weeks where all four of us were around because Ali was not travelling the globe for a change. We are back to the stalwarts. And who better to take us into like the hype cycle, I guess, of the last 6 months, maybe the last 6 to 12 months has been Agile's dead, Agile's not dead, Agile's dead. And, most of us generally avoid staying out of the kind of big emotional hype cycle wars on social media. But we thought, why not? Let's go there. And who better to take us there than Niko?
Oh yeah, it was really a huge moment. People always asking, what are you doing now? Agile is dying, everything is dying. Do you still have a job tomorrow? And I always thought, why not? And we will also go through such questions during our episode. What part of Agile is dead? Is Agile completely dead? Or are we thinking? Or are we just in a bubble thinking it's dying or whatever? It was really something that was with me the last years and was always asked. I had a half year ago, I had a podcast in Swiss German about it. I was the guest, not the moderator. So I thought this could be really a nice conversation with all the people around the globe. So I want to start with the true passion, special moments, surprise challenges you had. And I would like to start with mine because it's a little bit a sad one. And then hopefully you had a little bit nicer one. My special moment was really sad when I realized around me in 2024, a lot of good friends, we had a small boutique, small companies, 1-2 people just starting disappear. So closing the company, but they just become internal somewhere. So internal change agent, internal transformation manager, internal RTs, but a lot of mini companies with 2, 3, 1 person just starting disappearing. And that was really my surprising sad moment, seeing that the consultants just starting to disappear. And then I started maybe to believe that maybe Agile is dying, but I wasn't sure. So that was my special moment. Stephan. Oh, yeah.
I was just going to say, your special moment's meant to lift you up, Niko.
Yeah, let's start with the man in the mirror. I had a few special moments the last few months and years where, and you probably know this feeling, you felt ashamed of yourself, or you felt ashamed of oneself, looking at coaches, looking at others, and you, in German, it's this word Fremdschämen. You're really embarrassed how it's going. And again, Mark, yeah, it's more negative than positive. And it's, for me, it was the question, okay, what's going wrong? Why are we doing stuff in a certain way? And just the last week, I did some tree pruning. It's weeding time, right? Sometimes you have to weed out stuff that doesn't work. Dead wood is not good on a tree. So every year I do the same, and I thought, that's probably a good analogy that we can use during this hour when we talk about, is Agile dead, or is or are parts of Agile dead? So yeah, what I've seen over and over again, and I challenge myself, am I just someone who is doing Agile instead of what is being Agile? Stuff like that. So yeah, let's talk about weeding time, so that you have nice flowers, nice trees, and that Agile is not dead.
Oh, thank you so much.
Probably
nice picture, pruning a tree.
That actually, it's interesting that links to kind of the opening of my thinking about my special moment. And, what does this provoke to me? It's learning to let go of the right way to do Agile. And, there were so many things baked into me of, this is the way Agile works. This is Agile. And then I've spent lots of years going, well, hang on, Agile's not a binary thing. It's not Agile or not Agile. The whole notion of it is becoming more Agile. But it's always been a struggle to me to go, if you boil it back too far to go, it's all, we talk, the big buzz phrase in Australia is capital A and little a agility. And you want little a agility, which is all the mindset. But then I've seen so many people go, it's all about mindset. Just have complete and utter chaos because it's all just fluff. So how do you let go without everything descending into fluff and chaos?
Wow, so Agile is non-binary, so it will have problems in the States now. Okay, no, not. Let's not get political.
That is not safe anymore, my friend.
That's not safe. Oh, great. Okay, I expect some bad tweets on X. So thank you, guys. Let's start becoming more seriously. When I listen to you, yeah, it's not binary. It's a not yes or no. Why should we do Agile at all? Would be my next question to you. Or which parts of Agile should we do? Or Mark, you asked. I don't know really what Agile is when I look back. So why should we do Agile at all?
Well, I would throw in Charles Darwin's quote. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And for me, that's the true kind of reason why we do Agile. You have to be responsive in a certain way. And Mark just brought it in through his initial statement. It's something that I would say, I always see those, there are the dogmatics and the pragmatics, right? One part says it has to be done like that. And the other say, hey guys, we're adapting. We're applying it to a certain context. And I think I like Charles Darwin's statement. You can take either side. The question is, will they be there tomorrow? And will they do a good job? So for me, it's more talking about what is the context, what's your job to be done, and how do you adapt to the situation that you can apply stuff that is based on principles and not on practices and methods. And probably that I'm looking to Mark, that's probably for me this interesting area between what is the good wood and what is the dead wood. And if you clip and if you prune trees, you have to decide, how far back do I cut a branch? What do I still leave on the tree? Hopefully seeing some growing and some stuff evolving out of there. If not, it's learning time.
So I think the thing for me, and I've been asking myself this question more and more over the last few years, and maybe I'll pretext it. Let me go into doom and gloom land, so Niko's not feeling too lonely over there. I have spent the last couple of years going, what do I introduce myself as now? Because I spend a lot of time, people say, what do you do? What's your role? Particularly in a business context, I'm being introduced to the room. They go, who are you? And I say, I'm an Agile coach. And I hit a point a few years ago where I went, I don't feel comfortable introducing myself as an Agile coach anymore because that conjures this picture in people's heads. And I don't feel like that's me. And then well, if that's not what I am, what am I? But I think that the broader question is, well, what really is Agile? Because I think the longer Agile's been around, and it's nearly 25 years now, the more stuff we've picked up and bundled in and gone, well, this is part of Agile. And, go figure, Agile is now, well, we're experts on what leadership is, right? Because Agile is a whole different style of leadership. We're experts on product management, right? Because Agile is a whole different way of building products. And we're experts on, customer research because Agile is all about customer centricity. And we're experts on, right? And the list just goes on and on and on, right? Because if you look around, the average recommended library of anybody talking about Agile or anybody talking about Agile methods, you'll see all this stuff that isn't necessarily Agile, but Agile's grabbed hold of. And, there's all these separate disciplines. And if you look, right, if you go and look in the product space and you think about all the Agile product books and the information and the insights they have on product and product strategy, and then you go and read the real product books, I'd say it's like product management for dummies, except that would be too generous.
Yeah.
And so I think there's this question for me to go, we've got all these disciplines. They're all still relevant. What was Agile? Like, if other than a collector of these things or an umbrella or 4 value statements and 12 principles, what is it? And I think if we're going to ask ourselves the question of should we do Agile at all, we've got to figure out, well, what actually is Agile?
Exactly. And Mark, it really resonates when you talk about this perspective, how you answer the question, who are you, what are you doing, right? And just recently I had similar questions, and I'm using more and more, I'm an SPCT. What is the T today? Today I'm a trainer. Today we're talking about what is the architecture of the transformation. So that eases my life a little bit to put myself into the context and then have a deep dive what agile practices, what agile approach could be beneficial, right? For me, the question, and I'm with you, Mark, yeah, what is agile and why should we do agile? And I would say I always start, where am I today? If I look at the context, if I look at the situation I'm in, and I probably don't have the universal answer for that. But I try to collaborate, I try to initiate the communication, and also to find out where are the people I'm dealing with, the people I'm collaborating with.
Yeah, maybe it's exactly the things we're doing under the label of Agile, because I think those things will not go away. I realized last year many people start asking me, can you just remove the word Agile because it's counterproductive? So remove Agile there. Do we have a synonym for Agile? Please don't write it because it's the wrong horse you're betting on. And when I listen to you two, it's so many skills, so many material behind of it. And I personally really think we will continue doing Agile, maybe call it differently, or maybe call it again Agile, because I had last 2 months a mandate where they really want to have the word Agile in it because it means something for them. It means them more dynamic, etc. But personally, why should we do Agile at all? Do we have a chance not doing it that way? Because the world is still spinning faster and faster. We still need experiments. We still need that what Agile means behind of it, the being Agile, and I don't see an alternative. What is the alternative? Starting doing plans again and hoping the 2 5-year bets ends up well.
So the question that I would have though, Niko, right, is do you need Agile to do experiments?
No. I need the material behind Agile, the skills, the practices behind Agile. Why are you asking?
That's an interesting question from Mark, and I assume he's poking holes into something where people just tend to, there's a situation, what's the practice or the tool I should use? And what I try to do in such a moment, I say, guys, let's step back. What are we talking about, right? Are we worshipping a practice to solve a problem, or are we really deep into it where we say, okay, there's the current situation. What is like a target picture? And between the current situation and the target picture, there are many paths. And now let's talk about, should we use a car? Should I walk from A to B? Or should I take a plane? And that then triggers different practices and different behavior, right? I'm not sure if I got it, Mark, but I assume you're going into this direction.
I just figure we've got to, like, if we're going to dig into this topic, we've got to sort of poke at it pretty hard. And it's one of the things for me that I ask myself a lot about Agile is, and I'm going to give it a slightly different story. I did some work with a company a few years ago where they had kind of done a roll your own Agile. It was called Ways of Working, really common thing. And it was a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other thing. And it was mostly a mess. And I spent a lot of time looking at it going, well, how do you start to fix it? How do you start to make it work? And what I found was that so many of the core Agile concepts had become ingrained so deeply wrongly there that you were going to have to come up with new words in order to get something better, right? And the one that really stood out for me was product owner, right? They had close to 1,000 product owners, none of whom looked anything like a product owner. in terms of their job responsibility.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there going, oh, actually, if you want real product ownership, you're probably going to have to find a term that's not product owner in order to get it. And this is where I start to wonder with the Agile stuff. And the classic for me is if you look at the product operating model movement, which is a lot of people go, well, that's the replacement. And if you look at, and Marty Kagan's stuff's classic, right? He writes some brilliant stuff. And he goes, this is better than Agile. But I read what he's writing and I go, what you're describing is good Agile.
Exactly.
But it's what people think when they hear the word, I think, is what starts to get really interesting.
I have something to add to that too. One of the first episodes, when we had the long ones, the 90 minutes ones, Mark asked me why I love systemic coaching. And one of the points was it gave me a completely new words I can use, a completely new dictionary. So instead of talking about complex and complicated, which didn't resonate with some people, I was able to use different words meaning the same. And then I realized being able to connect to the people and using their vocabulary, it's much more effective than just using my standard Scrum, safe Kanban vocabulary I used before. And that was also one of the facts that were really important for me to realize. I'm now I'm better in connecting now and using their language, using where they are and not where am I, and explaining something is working with them together. I would love to know from your side something different we haven't prepared. Is which practices do you do at the moment, which are part of your DNA or part of your muscle memory? So.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, go, Stephan.
Let me kick it off. By the way, listening to you, Niko, we have to add a new T to the SPCT. You're also a translator, right? and picking that one up. What's in my DNA since I'm 20, since I've joined the army, is this: how do you do design thinking? Nowadays, we call it design thinking. At that time, it wasn't called differently. How do you assess a challenge or a mission or a situation before jumping to conclusions? And that's deeply ingrained in my DNA. Although my brain sometimes tries to jump to first diamond. I know the solution. I want to jump to the solution. But still, first, let's assess the situation, the challenge, and then again find out which tool, which practice, which approach is probably the most beneficial. Although I have a huge range of options all the time, right? I can use many tools to put nails into something. But there's probably the best one using a hammer. But still, what type of hammer? Big one. I do have sledgehammers at home. I do have small hammers. My wife has really thin hammers for some nitty-gritty stuff to be done, right? I would say that's deeply ingrained in my DNA, and I would call it an agile practice. I would just say that's the way I work. That's the way I function.
I had yesterday a very, very cool talk with somebody also with a high rank in the Swiss military. I'm back. Sorry, I had to cough. And was really surprised when he explained to me that communication and leadership is a product in the military language. They really have a product thinking in communication, in leading. And what he started explaining to me was really design thinking. And I thought, I have to rewatch Stephan's talk at the SAFE Summit in Washington, because he really talked about design thinking in leadership. And it was really cool to dive in a completely different area about products, about leadership, about design thinking. And it resonates with me when you say it's part of your DNA, because it's really cool stuff. It was not really the military I enjoyed when I was younger. Maybe I was in the wrong unit. But when I listen to many people who have a high rank there and talk about leadership, about what they are doing, they are really doing agile stuff there. So they are really giving goals, and not you have to do that and that and that. So it's really cool stuff. So at the end, I think Swiss military by DNA is agile. So consultants can learn a lot of just you say that. Yeah. I needed more people to to make me believe. So
let's have a boot
Mark.
camp.
yeah. Oh, please don't one with mud. Normal boot camp.
No. So as the guy who introduced the concept of the surprise question, I've got to say it's much more fun handing it out than receiving it. Uh, I actually think I'm going to say it's facilitation, right? If the question is what are the practices that are parts of your DNA and muscle memory, I would argue that I really grabbed hold of facilitation under the Agile umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Because Agile had so much collaborative stuff, and, there were people speaking about facilitation in the Agile circles, that's where I got my passion for facilitation. And I would argue, if tomorrow you said to me, you've got to give away every skill you've got in the Agile space except one, what's the one you keep? It's facilitation. Because at the end of the day, helping people have better conversations that lead to more impactful outcomes, right? That's the goal of facilitation. I'm going to say it's that.
Cool. For me, it's experiments. I realized when I was forced to do a project leader of a project non-agile after 4 or 5 years of doing Scrum and Agile, I wasn't able to just do a 1-year thing without any evidence in between, on only paper evidence. So I realized what's really in my brain is the whole time finding ways to prove it's right, and not with paper, to prove with prototypes, to prove with experiments, to prove with pop-up stores, to prove with many techniques before MVP. It was just there because before I really, as a developer, I always showed things. And then they asked me in a more traditional, it was by the way a bank or a financial institute, they asked me to be the project leader of a huge program. And then they expected to give a 1-year plan, and I wasn't able to just make a plan without saying, okay, this 1-year plan has 2 stages, and in one stage we have such increments. In the first increment, I want to show you something. And that was my project plan. And I realized, that's part of my DNA. I cannot change. It's like the reverse bicycle movie we are showing. I just learned driving the reverse bicycle, and I wasn't able to go back. And I did such things before, but I wasn't able to go back again. Let's go the other direction about what sticks to you, what is part of your DNA, which parts of Agile should become obsolete or have become obsolete or ineffective.
So I'm going to jump straight on this one because it's a soapbox topic for me. And I think it's technical agility. And I don't know about it having become obsolete, but I think it lives under a different name now. Right? If you go literally collect any 200 Agile coaches in a room and ask any of them to talk deeply about technical agility, if you can get, even 5% of them with a clue, I'd be really surprised.
Yeah.
But if you look at the people who wrote the Agile Manifesto, how many of them were actually software developers? And, it used to be, this was probably one of the biggest things for me to work my way through in terms of the mechanics of agility and the right way to do Agile. Because what I know is you can't do iterative and incremental development without employing the technical agility skills. Right? It's just impossible to release faster and faster and faster and more regularly unless you are practicing aggressive test automation and refactoring and lucid couple design, right? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I used to, I'd see and people go, Agile, it felt good for a while and then it didn't. And you look and you go, how are you going with CI/CD and TDD and BDD and refactoring? Oh, no, none of that stuff, right? And you go to devs, and to any dev you talk to, Agile's the process people, right? Talk about Agile. Well, when I was a young dev, there were the project managers and they worried about life cycles and gates and things like that. And they were the process police there to make it harder for me to develop software. I think the typical dev today goes, well, Agile is the process police, there to make it harder for me to develop software. And if there's one thing that shifts the way we've got to think about Agile more than anything else, it's the fact that the technical people have left the fold.
Yeah, there was also I love to go to the unconference in Zurich, the Agile unconference. And the last years we had only one developer being there. The rest weren't developers anymore. It was really impressive. But when I listen to you, Mark, as a systemic coach, I have different pictures of an organization I want to transform. And what I often hear is the people are a lot of technical or they see the organization as a system, as a mechanic system I have to upgrade with Agile. And all those agile coaches have seen to try it on a technical way. This is the way you have to dance. This is the thing you have to do, to eat, to drink. It's exactly the way you have to behave, because it's a routine I'm gonna install. It's something that went also away, in my opinion. And those people try to say, okay, it's an organism. You have to treat it like something that involves themselves. We're more successful. But I think it's a different box I'm opening now.
Yeah, sorry, go, Stephan.
No, go. You go first, Mark.
So all I was going to say is there's a cascading effect, right? Because if you're not employing technical agility, then vertically sliced stories are probably not a great thing to do, right? Because vertically sliced stories are there to drive iterative product development, and iterative product development only works if the cost of change is low, right? That's not the way most people are developing. So maybe I don't want to do vertically sliced stories, because actually they're much less efficient unless I'm getting feedback and course corrections out of them. But if I'm not engineering in a way that takes advantage of that, maybe I want to do something different, right? Maybe it raises questions about the value of an iteration, because the idea of an iteration is it's an iteration of my product. But if I'm not employing technical agility, it may not be an iteration of my product. This is one of the things I think, whether it's, pragmatic or passionate or whatever, what you're seeing if you look at a lot of the product folks is they're doing a lot more aggressive experimentation during discovery, and then going, we've got the tech people involved in our discovery work and experimentation and building prototypes and stuff, and then we just build it. They're less worried about an iterative build approach, which is what Agile was really focused on in the beginning, but only worked if you had the hearts and minds of the engineers. So it really starts to challenge what is agility when you start to let go of that.
Yeah, and let me pick up that thread. I think I can't answer the question what is less effective or obsolete as a practice, Niko. But what I observe over and over again, and the longer I'm in the trade, is, and Mark just mentioned it, is you have those keywords like, what's a cadence? A cadence is like a rhythm. It's helpful, but we should talk about how do we develop in a flow-based way. The rhythm is the rhythm, but the rhythm doesn't solve your problem. But the question for me is, how do you move from one thing to another thing in a more evolutionary way? Like, how can we do flow-based stuff? I ask people in the POPM course, Safe says we have a PI planning every 8 to 12 weeks. What about if an opportunity arises in a portfolio where in 4 weeks' time we should have a PI planning? The dogmatics would say, no, in 10 weeks' time we have a PI planning. Deal with it. I would say, no, flow-based means you need other practices to really be adaptive and agile, right? The same with, we talk about velocity. Your velocity is a historical data. Why do you need velocity? Because we should talk more about like outcome-based metrics. So when you ask me what is obsolete, what is probably less effective, I can't answer, but I can probably bring in some ideas. What's the evolution that being agile and doing stuff in an agile way is transformed into something that is really beneficial? And I'm not that much tied to practices, and that's my interpretation of what Mark said as well, right? It's again the context. It's what kind of jobs are you solving, and you probably can hear it. That's my passion, right? I don't like those discussions about is it agile or isn't it agile, or is only part of agile still alive and kicking? I don't care. It's more like going away from something that probably helped us 20 years ago into something that is more valuable. And what I see over and over again is from the basics now into the real discussions, like a DoD helps us to keep standards. But more and more, I have discussions about what's the definition of value, right? Being really agile to create something where customers and employees tell us, yeah, that's useful, I can use it. So that will be my answer to your question, Niko, and probably not the right answer.
It's a cool one, and it has a lot of truth in it. I thought about this question a lot, and I think what is obsolete or less effective is the whole certification industry. So in 2 days you're becoming this, in 4 days you become a SPC, in 5 days you become an executive, whatever. I think this part is dead and should be dead and should become less effective, should become obsolete. And I have another example. So yesterday I've been together with a company and I offered them the advanced SPC training without them being SPCs. It was was an experiment, and I asked Scout Agile if I'm allowed to do it because I think those people, this LACE team, and this guiding coalition needs new material to involve. And I asked them, and to my surprise, they really said, "Yeah, we want to do this." And I told them, "Yeah, but at the end, you will have no certification because you're not SPCs. 2 people are, the rest is not. So you will pay a license because I use the material, but you will not get a certificate." And they told me, "We don't care about it. It's about learning. It's a journey we're having together. The next 2 months,
Cool.
2.5 months, we have a journey together, develop our company." And then I was really flashed because it's what I want. I really want to work with people who want to develop themselves and not just having like more badges here and there and looking like a Christmas tree because they have all the badges that are available in the market. And I really think, and sometimes I really hope, that the whole certification industry isn't there anymore because of the certificates, but that the trainings are there because people want to continue and evolve. So it's something between hope and reality. It's halftime. Guys, let's go to the jiggle and let's go to using the different part of the brain today. And that was a jiggle I used, I think, more than 1 hour to find my own answer. And it was so cool when I wrote it down. When I wrote it down was, if Agile were a misunderstood child star, which one would it be and why? So Agile being a child star, movie, theater, music, but a misunderstood child star. Which one and why? Who wants to start?
Well, since you stole the most popular conclusion, Niko, why don't you start?
Shoot, Niko, you first.
Okay,
You're in the lead.
When I wrote the question, I really thought, oh yeah, it's Kevin Home Alone, it's Macaulay Culkin, it's so clear. And then I realized, okay, why is he misunderstood? And shouldn't he have a comeback? And it was really, I have to find something else. And then at the end, I really took many turns, and I ended up again with Macaulay Culkin. And then I needed some Googling and helping of AI and say, is he really misunderstood? And is he really coming back? And then I really was surprised by his biography. So he was, I think there's nobody in our generation who don't know Kevin Home Alone or Home Alone, Kevin Allein zu Hause, whatever. Macaulay Culkin, most famous child actor in his generation, huge fame, and yeah, he was controlled by his parents, by who took over finance and his career. Sounds like certification industry in Agile, took over by other bad forces. No, by other forces. And what he did is instead of chasing the previous success, he just tried new ways for himself. I think painting was something, theater was something, and he really did a comeback. And I wasn't aware of that. He did a comeback on his own terms. What does it mean, his own terms? No big studio, no franchise pressure, so no pressure, no massive PR tour. I'm coming back. I'm the big one. And he's still selective. What do I want to achieve? What do I want to do? And then I really loved this kind of biography. So being a child star, being successful, and then at the end deciding this is what I want to do. And so I ended up with Kevin Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin. You guys, who wants next?
Stephan.
I hand over the talking stick to Mark because my answer is more generic.
Are you admitting that we finally had a week where Niko managed to cause one of us to fail with the jiggle?
Yes.
Oh.
If it's any consolation, it nearly broke me as well. Because I started doing my usual conversation with ChatGPT in response to the jiggle. And it kept going, Macaulay Culkin, Macaulay Culkin, Macaulay Culkin. For all the reasons that Niko just shared, right? I kept hunting. Longest conversation I've had with ChatGPT about the jiggle yet. I wound up with Lindsay Lohan. And she came up and I went, no, not that way. And then I kept hunting. And then she came up again. I was like, okay, I'll give in, right? And it's like, okay, the bit that I think stood out to me in your jiggle was this the misunderstood piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could find plenty of examples, but they weren't necessarily misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the perception of Lindsay Lohan, right? She was a reckless party girl. Drugs, craziness, party life, all kinds of ridiculousness. But if you actually look at the backstory, right, she was pushed into Hollywood too young. She struggled with really toxic family, constant media harassment, right? And the conclusion is that her downfall wasn't necessarily just about her own bad choices. It was about being pushed into a system, aka an industry, that used and discarded young female stars. And I think, the ideas and the ideals that the people who wrote the Agile Manifesto had got pushed into the corporate world, and then backed up by a certification industry. And in a lot of ways, we kind of got the Lindsay Lohan world.
Great. And you will love Stephan's summary on a meta level, because it really summarizes both up, yeah?
ChatGPT offered me a few misunderstood child stars, and I was more interested in and Mark gave me the keyword, what's the backstory, what's the pattern behind it? And if you look at this, popularity too fast at a young age, you can't handle it, right? Exploited by an industry, certification, in the film industry, you have those big offices and so on. And at a given time, and I think that ties to our question, what part of Agile is dead? It loses its charm, its original charm. And you have to kind of move on. You have to find some other charming and attracting parts of it. Finally, being washed up, outdated. That's why people say, yeah, Agile is dead, right? And the question is, and you mentioned it with Macaulay Culkin, the comeback in its own way. And I like that, right? The own way is really something that fits into the time, fits into the context, fits into the situation. And I think that the backstory of Misunderstood Child Stars is quite a good one. And it made me think quite a lot the last week.
So to our audience, just use LinkedIn or the comments in YouTube or wherever you can leave comments. What is your misunderstood child star? Sorry, not your misunderstood childhood. Sorry. If you have one, it really made us all think a lot, and I'm really happy to this contribution, because I hope for a comeback, or a continuously comeback. Let's go back to our topic, Agile. If Agile has been misinterpreted or misapplied over time, do you have any examples of this? Where was it misunderstood?
Feels like it's your turn to go first, Stephan.
Yeah, we all probably know and have heard about cargo cults, right? People on an island pretending, waiting for planes flying in, but nothing happens, right? And I think a lot of agility, a lot of the part of being agile is misinterpreted. So if you don't have a good understanding, this leads to a lot of I'd say bad stuff, right? For example, do Scrum, you will be shipping faster. No, not at all. Because you focus, you will be able to ship faster, not because you are doing Scrum. Or misapplication. I see that over and over again. Frameworks becoming like a method, right? Let's do safe, and we're safe. Just recently, in one of the courses, one attendee told me, leadership has been to leading safe, and they heard that there are the top 10 features. And before the next PI planning, they asked product management, give us the top 10 features. And he replied to senior management and said, guys, I have at least 40 features. And he presented the most important one, or most important ones, focusing on what we want to achieve, or what challenges the business do we cover now in the next PI. What came back through the reporting line? We asked for the 10 features. Why did you only present 4 or 5, right? So misapplied, misunderstood. I don't like that. I want to change that. And that's probably the stuff I see over and over again. And that triggers a lot of good conversation, a lot of good collaboration. And that's where I jump in as a coach.
Mark?
It's a beautiful one, Stephan. Look, I think there's the obvious, what goes wrong if you take the Agile Manifesto and you read it as instead of rather than over. And so you get, no plans in Agile, no documents in Agile, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, that's been around forever. I think if I had one that really drove for me, it's Agile equals Scrum, right? And, Scrum was one way of interpreting Agile. And I think more and more, if you look at today's world, if Agile is going to survive, probably the world that gave us Scrum is not necessarily the world we live in today. And, Scrum lovers of the world are probably going to send us lots of hate mail now. But as we adapt in this world of, all the things that have changed over recent years and that are different than they were 25 years ago when 30 years ago when they wrote Scrum, getting out of this Agile equals Scrum, and whether that's that you have sprints, that you have a backlog, that you have potentially shippable increments, that you have product owners, that you have Scrum Masters, right? Surely Agile's more than that.
Agreed.
I would like to add something about the manifesto. If you are not English speaker or English is not your main language, what I do in my trainings, I ask the German-speaking people, how will you translate this manifesto values, this over? And nobody writes instead on a sticky note. And it's really impressive to see what words they find for over, which makes sense in this context. And it's really an eye-opener when I tell them, why do we use instead? When you have so many ideas what it is. And then it's really a moment where people are realizing, okay, that's about Agile. It's about no plans anymore and no tools anymore, no documentation anymore. So it's really about valuing more the other parts. We have one thing in our podcast which we don't use so much, and I would like to start using it again, is asking Copilot things. And this time, Stephan asked Copilot, a safe Copilot, what part of Agile is that? What was the answer, Stephan?
I was really surprised, and I must say, good stuff provided by Safe Copilot. It said old practices, some traditional Agile practices may not fit well in today's fast-paced environments. I hear Mark with your opening statements, right? Waterfall mindset. Still a waterfall mindset. You haven't done the shift of paradigm. You're using something that doesn't fit because your mind is not set the right way. And the last one, it really touched me, like lack of commitment. You're doing some certification, a little bit of buy-in from management. Yeah, let's do Agile and we're safe. No, you're not. If we as an organization do not fully embrace Agile principles, first of all, and then deriving what practices we should use, we're probably doomed, right? And I interpret the situation that lots of senior management and organizations say, yes, Agile is dead. Let's get rid of the coaches. That's an easy save, right? Because we didn't see that commitment. It's not a transformation that really changes the mindset, the habits, the behavior, which is then kind of visualized through how we work and how we apply and use all those practices. Safe Copilot, well done.
Yeah, I was also impressed by the answers. So my part, which part of Agile is misinterpreted, which I've seen a lot since I really started with Agile, with Scrum, Kanban, what was really always misunderstood was the idea of at the end of an iteration of a sprint, there's the huge reveal, have we fulfilled our job? So the PO comes in and say, show me what you have done. 0 points. Full points. Yes, I give you the approval. And so what the heck is this? And I still see people saying, we have to wait until the iteration ends. And then the PO tells us, so why the heck wait for 2 weeks if you finish now? That's one thing of misinterpretation we had the kind of approval. Now the approval is within the sprint or within the iteration. Or another thing seeing is misunderstanding the roles. So a PO being somebody far away, just coming once in a while and saying good job or bad job, something like that. Or Scrum Masters RT being the people serving tea and reserving rooms. What the heck? They are leaders. They're really not giving time to understand. And the cargo culture you said in the beginning, it's just I read something, we have to do this. And that's not what Agile means. So that's that part which, in my opinion, was misinterpreted. But if you say, going back to Seth Copilot's answer about which part is dead, who killed Agile?
We are looking for the guilty person, right?
I'm going to save the who killed because I'm sure one of you guys are going to go there. I'm going to go to what killed. And without, I don't think the thinking behind Agile is dead. I think the thinking is very much alive and well, but maybe the label is starting to be a little bit less alive. But if you think about what was the Agile Manifesto, it was actually a revolutionary declaration, right? That's the whole concept of a manifesto. You think about these folks who went and had their arguments and published their manifesto. They were trying to spark a revolution. And a revolution has to have an oppressive overlord to revolt against. And that's what gives it the energy, right? But they were revolting against a world that modern people, unless they're old, don't know. You got anybody who's entered the workforce in the past 15 years, they've never experienced the world that gave the Agile revolution its impetus. So there's no enemy, there's no revolution.
You're right.
So you said what killed Agile. Let's go to who killed Agile. In my opinion, and it's part of my job, to be honest, is fixing things, imposters with bad implementations. So those are the people who killed Agile. I read a book. I've been in a four-day training and then explaining what is a real Agile, a real safe, doing it by the book. There is no book, but yeah, we're doing it by the book. And then failing. So bad implementations of people with an imposter mindset. That's, I think, what killed parts of Agile or Agile at all.
Yeah, look, it's all about being humans, and we like finger pointing, right? That's why we have those questions: who killed it, or what killed it? Let's open up a little bit the horizon again. I think and Mark touched this a bit. There's a lot of frustration that the promises, and also the wrong promises, are not held and you don't see the results. So for me, it's a lot of frustration. It's a lot of buzzwords used by people, like you said. It could be imposters, it could be coaches who name themselves coaches, but they are not real coaches. They haven't spent that much time becoming a coach. We already talked about misinterpretation. And what I see as well over and over again is an oversimplification. Do this and it works. No. First of all, again, understand the principle. And just yesterday in a POPM course, I asked them, why do we have a review at the end if we already have seen all the stories and all the stories would have been approved? They looked at me and said, oh, then there's no review. I said, no, wrong. Why don't we talk about facts and figures at that time? So then transitioning into a good retrospective, right? Because otherwise your retrospective becomes a kumbaya retrospective where we talk about how did we feel, how good was it, but we don't have the facts and we don't have the figures. So oversimplification for me is a big pitfall, and it leads to the frustration. It leads to this, Agile is dead, or part of Agile is dead. And I wouldn't say who killed it. It's probably every one of us not doing a proper job and oversimplifying the stuff.
So we killed it together?
But I think I'm just going to add one addendum on that.
Yeah.
I think the Agile religious wars are also a big part of the problem.
Yep.
As a way of working that was meant to be all about collaboration, the amount of vitriol that has been hurled backwards and forwards between methods and frameworks and my Agile's better than your Agile's arguments, you know.
And
I can feel you, Mark.
Yeah. And we all should know who's the winner of a religious war. Nobody. Really nobody.
Lots of
So the final question, it's a two-part question. I didn't know which one is the right one. The first question would be, if Agile is really truly dead, what should replace Agile? Is one part of a question. And the other part is, which parts of Agile will survive, if any? So choose your question and give me a nice answer.
Yeah, I think Mark mentioned it. I think as well, Agile isn't dead. It's more about, and let's be positive, right? It's about the spirit. It's about the attitude, how you approach things. Are you a dogmatic? Don't do it. It's about outcomes. It's about impact. And if your process doesn't allow to do this, change it, right? That's being adapted. That's being agile. And Mark also mentioned it. I do a recap. Technology drives agility. And we have to bake that in. If you stick to a method or a practice that was maybe formulated 20, 30 years ago, not good. You have to adapt over the time.
Mhm. Thanks, Stephan. What I really hope, or what I think will be there for us, is the fast outcomes. Present results, real results. People can touch it, can discuss now because they have something in their hands. They see something. That's an important part. And communication. I think coming together, like the bigger events, PR planning events. I think this part will survive because you need those brains working together. So working together, communication, fast outcomes. You can name it how you want it, but our world will stay spinning fast. We will have environments where we have to try things out because the plan doesn't work. We need experiments, and this part will survive because that's our world. What else can you do? Whatever comes next, or if it's still agile, this part will stay, in my opinion. That I have a strong opinion once in a time. Mark.
Yeah, look, I think it's following a thread for me. I think the various crafts that the Agile umbrella wrapped all have strong futures. And, if you look, we had Evan Laybourne from the Business Agility Institute on our portfolio podcast last year. And we were talking about a study they'd done on the current state of Agile. And, the conclusion that they found in their study was people are not hiring for Agile role titles now, but they want Agile skills in the people they're hiring. And so if you look at it and you go, well, what about technical agility? Well, technical agility kind of turns up these days if you look at DevSecOps and the DevX movement. About the product stuff, well, that turns up if you looked at the product operating model and the various movements that, it's there. But I think the question that we've got to ask ourselves from the Agile perspective is, what's left behind if you disaggregate all of those other disciplines? And to me, it's kind of how do we collaborate at work, right? And how do we get better at collaborating at work to pursue outcomes? But I also think that's a world that's really in flux because between COVID, remote work, and AI coming along, I was chatting to a friend the other day, right? We remember the early days of Agile. Those early days of, getting 5 or 6 guys in a room surrounded by whiteboards, right? All sitting next to each other, computers back to back, and what that gave you. I mean, I remember that Agile was amazing, but I don't think we're ever going to see it again, right? So what does the new world look like? And then how do we get that type of hyper collaboration and nimbleness in a remote work AI agent supported world?
Wow. Last question is a small one. We always end up with if you had only just one sentence or one key takeaway, which one would it be? And mine is iterate, iterate, iterate. And with that, sharpen your product management skills.
And I would add misunderstood, exploited, but still kicking in a different form.
Oh.
I'm going to say focus on the disciplines and the umbrella will look after itself.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, guys, for your support, this discussion. I'm looking forward to comments in LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you can leave comments. And Mark, bring us home.
All right. Well, thank you, Niko. That was never quite sure where that one was going to go, but it was a bit of fun. We are back next week. Ali's back next week. And last week we opened up our favorite tools for remote facilitation. And we were meant to cover both hardware and software, but we got so excited talking about all our hardware toys that we never got near software. So next week we are back and we're going to look at some of the favorite software we used to support us with remote facilitation. And Ali is back from wherever he's been traveling. So in the meantime, have a wonderful week, and we'll look forward to getting back into facilitation geekery next week.